Hello, my name is Faina, and I have dedicated the last 7 years to honing my craft and fine tuning my strategy.
Welcome to Trading in the Zen, where we help traders find their groove. I'm your co-host, Louise Nonweiler, a trading psychologist and multi-award-winning clinical hypnotherapist. Join us weekly as we delve into the trading world, exploring psychology, well-being, health, and mindset. Through expert insight, interviews, and actionable strategies, we help you as traders unlock the mindset needed to navigate markets with confidence and achieve peak performance.
At Trading in the Zen, we believe that there's much more to trading than numbers and probabilities. Like an athlete, a trader should operate in their peak state. Each week, you will have mind-blowing interviews as well as actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better trader. Thanks for spending time with us today. Now, let's dive right in. In this episode, we speak with Chad. Chad owns and runs a financial planning firm based in Anchorage, Alaska, that manages roughly over $1 billion. His mission is to educate and empower people with tools and knowledge to safeguard their financial future. Let's dig in. Hello and welcome to Trading in the Zen. Today we will be speaking with Chad. Hi, Chad. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Fania. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Chad. It's nice to have you on the show.
And of course, Louise. She's always here. Chad, so tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you come from, where you're going.
Well, I'm here in Anchorage, Alaska, while we are waiting out another long winter. Born and raised here, and that's where a lot of my client base got started. Now we work with folks all over the United States because, as you can imagine, not a super popular place for people to retire. And our clients spread out all over the U.S. now, and that's a big part of what we do is retirement income planning, making sure people don't run out of money in retirement and helping them build financial independence. We don't even call it retirement as it's typically thought of sometimes. It's more of this idea of having a work optional lifestyle to be able to get people to a point where they're independent from a paycheck, whether they choose to retire or start another career or continue in their job. The idea is they no longer need their job or their paycheck to maintain their current standard of living.
It sounds very, excuse me, it sounds very rewarding. I mean, how long have you been doing this? When did you build the company?
I started with impeccable timing in 2007, just as the world was sliding into the biggest global financial meltdown since the Great Depression, and had a daughter on the way and had no idea what I was stepping into. Of course, nobody did. I mean, banks were shutting down, everybody was scared. And at that time, I realized how important it was not just to deal with the financial aspect, but the psychological aspects of investing. And really, we see ourselves as people who, as professionals, who can add courage and clarity and confidence into the investing process for folks.
Yeah. And so let's dive into that then. Let's talk about the elite wealth coaching that you offer in the specific, because it's quite unique, isn't it? It's providing sort of the mindset as well. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, my background actually before coming into this, I was very involved in athletics and studied a lot of performance psychology. And we've actually implemented a lot of that into our financial planning because so much of it is behavioral coaching. We have a lot of people that get referred to us. They walk into our office and they worked with another advisor. They had a plan, they had an investment strategy, but they failed to execute it consistently. So, because as you both of you know, sustainable wealth is usually built slowly and methodically over time. It's a long process. So without the right mindset, without the right attitude towards finances and investing in wealth in general, it's almost impossible to sustain the necessary behaviors long enough. So we're almost working with people from the inside out, helping them not just identify better investments, but to actually become better investors. And those are two completely different things, just like giving somebody a faster car doesn't necessarily make them a better driver. You giving somebody a better paintbrush doesn't make them a better artist. I mean, you give me the nicest paintbrushes in the world, I'm going to paint you something that looks like my 6-year-old did it. I am not a good artist. I lack those skills. So what we try to do is actually empower people to become better investors. That way they are more equipped to benefit from whatever investment opportunities are available to them.
Fantastic. Sounds really, really
So
beneficial.
we know that people get into trading. One of the reasons is because they want to take control of their financial future, right? And the way 401ks is structured, a lot of people probably will not have enough money to live out their retirement, because a lot of people don't even really understand what a 401k is, or where it's going, or who's controlling it. Or so I feel like people get into trading frequently because they want to help themselves live a better retirement, a little bit more secure later years in life. And as you know, not everyone is meant to be a trader, because this is a profession, and I feel like the social media and all the other stuff made it so accessible and so easy looking for people to get into. And I think a lot of people jeopardize their financial future by attempting this without proper knowledge and education. Say someone, if someone wants to have the financial freedom and kind of secure their financial future beyond, working years and a little bit later, and managing their wealth, and perhaps trading is not something that they're succeeding at. How do you take someone like that and then help them understand what other options they have?
Well, and it depends on what success or lack of success looks like. So for a lot of people, their investments aren't necessarily the problem. It's their own behavior. They either are, they're maybe spending too much. So they're not feeding their investments up. It doesn't matter how good your investments are doing. If you're only putting in $10 a week, you're probably not going to build any wealth. So for people who are living outside their means and people who are burdened down by debt, we see a lot of those outside financial behaviors affecting their investments. And I'll just give you a quick analogy. We look at building wealth like an orchard. And our perspective is, during our career, we want to plant enough trees that we can just live off of the fruit that they produce. We don't have to actually chop down our orchard in retirement in order to sustain us. But if you're not planting enough trees, it doesn't matter how good those trees are. If your orchard is too small, it's not going to last. So a big part of it is just making sure that people are successful in the other areas of their financial life so they can feed their investments properly. And then I think a big part of it too is staying in there in the midst of the storms. I'm sure you ladies have seen, just like I have, people that bailed from perfectly good investment strategies, not because they weren't working, but because it was getting too difficult, it was getting too painful. People panic, or they get greedy and they're always chasing the next best thing instead of being patient and executing what absolutely will work. We talked a little bit before we started recording just about some of the analogies with fitness. And there's people who are always going from one diet to the next, chasing the next fad workout, 6-minute abs, then 5-minute abs and 4-minute abs. And they just don't do anything long enough to really see the success. And that's where the mindset comes in, is helping people get to a place where they can maintain consistency. And I think that's where a lot of investors lack, whether they're using traditional mutual funds, whether they're more actively trading. It's people lack consistency. They try to optimize before they standardize. They try to make something perfect before they've learned how to persevere.
I cannot tell you how many people look for the secret sauce, right? The analogy is like, even in trading, they jump from strategy to strategy to strategy without allowing the probabilities to work out in their favor. And then, and nothing is working, but it's not working because there's not one system that they have committed to and weathered the storms and then come out on the other side. How does one build that kind of perseverance and that kind of mindset where you're able to look at the storm and say, this shall pass?
So what we hear a lot in the financial industry is, this time it's different. what we remind people is exactly what you said. This too shall pass. And the there's things that are always coming down that have nuances that are different enough to make people say, we've never seen this before. The world is melting down. Armageddon's coming. The government's going to take all your money. Whatever the apocalypse du jour is. But a lot of times it's like a Mission Impossible movie where the villain is a little bit different this time. The characters are a little bit different. Again, there's nuances, but the plot is basically the same. And we've seen this movie before. We just can't see the end yet. So being able to weather through that and stick to our long-term plan. I think what a lot of people lack is they don't have a long-term objective. They don't have a clear idea of what they're building. It's like trying to create a house, trying to build a home without a blueprint. They're just slapping materials and boards together and things like that, hoping that this financial house comes out of it. And regardless of strategies you use to get there, whether it's stocks or real estate or mutual funds, people need to have a long-term objective of what they're trying to create and a blueprint that guides their saving and investing decisions towards that end, something that connects what their actions are today to what they're trying to create in the future. And a lot of people are really just collecting investments. They're collecting strategies. Like you said, Faina, they're jumping from thing to thing. It's like a cook who's trying to a chef trying to cook dinner, and they're jumping from recipe to recipe and recipe within the same process. And they've got lasagna going, then they've got a pizza recipe going, and then they've got the jambalaya thing, and it's all mix and mash. And there's no system to it, and it's just a mess, and it doesn't taste good, and it doesn't turn out. Because, well, no wonder you're trying to follow 6 different recipes simultaneously instead of having a clear vision of what you're trying to create in a recipe or a pathway to get you there, to make sure you're using the right ingredients and the right amounts and giving it enough time to actually work for you.
I think that's a really good point. And I think there's a lot of fear when it comes to money with so many people, and for so many different reasons. It could stem from things such as what they've seen and heard from childhood going in. It could even be, unfortunately, we do live in a world where there are a lot of scams, people have lost money, so forth. Now, how do you work with somebody or a family, say, to get them out of that fear mindset and into more of resilience and confidence?
Well, a part of it is just identifying what some of those money stories might be, because as you ladies both know, a lot of times when a child is growing up, in a lot of households, money is not a normal part of the conversation. When it does come up, a lot of times it's under stress. It's because there isn't any money. It's because bills aren't being paid. It's because maybe somebody did get scammed out of some money. So a lot of us grew up in households where money was typically brought up under negative connotations, and we only heard the bad stories. And that can create a lot of fear, and it can actually cause people to want to ignore money. Like, oh, finance is too frustrating, it's too overwhelming, it's too intimidating. I'm just going to ignore it. And it's kind of like your health or relationships. If you ignore them, they don't get better. They will only deteriorate. So whether finances seem intimidating or not, it doesn't allow us the freedom to be like, that's not for me. I'm going to ignore that. We have to, finances are a part of our life, whether we like it or not. And to be a good investor, to have a good long-term strategy, doesn't mean you won't feel fear. It just means you don't react to it. And that's one of the importance of having a plan, is you act on your plan rather than reacting to fear or greed or some of the chaos around us. But to be a courageous investor, sometimes you have to step forward in the face of fear and realize you don't have all the data that you would like. You don't know what the economy is going to do. You don't have a perfect strategy, but you have a good plan, and that's what you're going to execute. And I think action is what helps fear subside. If people sit on the sidelines, fear continues to build. So inaction breeds fear and anxiety. Action, strategic action, will start to weaken that fear. It will start to increase the feelings of courage and clarity, but we have to start moving forward with our long-term strategy. and knowing that the fear doesn't diminish until we're executing our plan.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. Yeah.
Just to further your point, I think we teach kids so many things in school, but financial education is not one of the things that we teach. So a lot of people come into their adulthood having no idea what investing looks like, what financial literacy looks like. They come in completely blind, and then later in life they're playing catch up. Well, while they already have certain financial habits formed and in place, and it's like, it's really hard to get back to the gym when you've gotten used to doing nothing, right? How early should parents start to encourage their children to learn about financial literacy, investments? Because in my opinion, if we start early enough, we teach kids so many useless things in school, but not one of them has to do with like money management, which is your whole life.
Exactly. And so I love that you brought that up because, at some point to graduate high school, all of us learned the difference between a sine and a cosine back in some geometry class that we might have cheated our way through. Who knows?
Yeah.
But like, when does that ever come up in life? But most of us were probably not taught in school the difference between a stock and a bond, something so basic and so fundamental to finances. And you're absolutely right. Like, we're taught a bunch of things that for most of us are not a part of our daily life, but yet who is detached from finance? Who can say that no, finances don't affect me? Whether you like it or not, whether you're into it or not, whether you're excited, finances are a part of all of our lives, and we're not taught that stuff. And I think as parents, it's important for us to just normalize those conversations. Even if you don't have, if you're a parent, you feel like I don't have this all figured out, that's fine. Talk to your kids about that. Like, share with them what you're trying to learn. Just make money a normal part of the conversation. That way, when times are stressful financially, that's not the only time money is being brought up. That's not the only time we're talking about our finances, is when we're going through a difficult time. So with our kids, we just try to talk about it as a normal part of the process. What are you saving up for? What is important? What is that thing on the horizon? What kind of chores, what kind of work are you planning to do to earn the money to save that thing or to buy that thing that you're saving up for? I just finished writing a book called Forging Financial Freedom, and we interviewed uh, several hundred folks from the Alaska oil field and oil workers from around the world as well. And when talking to these people who had a good relationship with money, who had a good handle on their finances, when I asked them when did they start thinking about the future, when did they start thinking about building wealth to provide for their retirement, most of these people, and again, some of these people in their 60s and 70s now, could point back to a time in their childhood, often in high school or even junior high, where a family member or a trusted, like a really close family friend mentored them and taught them about money. So for a lot of these people, they started building good financial behavior when they were 12, 13, 14 years old. So to your point, I think it's important that we do start those conversations early. We get kids thinking about it because they will have to deal with these things at some point. We might as well teach them that it's okay to discuss those things. So we can have conversations like we're all having right now. Money doesn't need to be a taboo subject.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Faina's really raised a very important point, because it's not just in the US, it's globally, that the education system does not teach anything about money, budgeting, saving, investing, banks, compounding, nothing. And I think you're exactly right. That conversation, the earlier that it is for a person to receive that, the better. So that goes on to my question. Do you feel that it's ever too late for a person to invest? Or is there?
It's never too late to start doing the right thing. There's a Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So a lot of us wish we could go back in time and not have bought the fancy car and invested that money, or didn't get into the credit card debt, or started a Roth IRA sooner or something like that. A lot of us wish we go back in time, but sometimes our regret of the past keeps us from pushing forward into the future. And we need to be able to learn from those mistakes, but not allow those things to shackle us. The coulda, woulda, shouldas. A lot of people live in the coulda, woulda, shoulda. We only have the path ahead. So we can't let our past steal from our future. So if people feel like they're behind, you might have to work a little bit harder. You might have to make more sacrifices, but it's never too late. Your future starts today.
I love that.
So I have a question. Is there a difference between good debt and bad debt, right? Is there a difference between, and what I mean by that is, there's like credit card debt, right? And so that's definitely not a good debt. But then let's say you made some investments and you feel like a little bit of that financial strain, and people sometimes confuse both of those things and label it as debt as opposed to, you're expanding to move forward rather than expanding your wallet to get set back, right? So is there I'm not sure if I'm putting the right terms to it, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. Like investments, putting your money towards and living a little more frugally so that the future is going to look better, or overextending yourself to the point into something that's not going to bring anything positive back.
So there's a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I mean, I work real closely with Dave Ramsey's organization. We have pretty strong opinions on debt. I have personally strong opinions on debt. And to your question, is there good debt versus bad debt? I think there's good debt versus bad debt in the same way there's good cancer versus bad cancer. So you'll hear somebody maybe say something like, oh, I just got diagnosed with such and such cancer. You're like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. And they're like, no, it's okay. It's one of the most treatable forms of cancer. At the end of the day, you still have cancer. That's something you still need to deal with. And I believe debt is a cancer to financial freedom.
Because I think a lot of people use up a specific tactic to get people to invest money that they will potentially lose and get into debt. But they say, this is good debt. This is good for you. Go ahead.
Yes.
Just take that extra money out from your 401k. That's going to be a good debt, So that is what I'm like, the predatory tactics that are being used to get people further into dependency.
Yes. And I think debt is destructive financially. I think it's destructive psychologically, and it increases our risk factors. So the analogy I'll give is like, let's say that you had a long drive ahead of you. And let's say that you have a 10-hour time window to make a 6-hour drive. So you have plenty of time to get there slowly, methodically, and following a roadmap, following your plan. And you're taking some breaks, and you can check on your car, make sure everything's going well, or you can try to make it in 4 hours. And you're going to drive 100 miles an hour. Now, you might get there faster, but you also increase the chances of never getting there at all. And I think debt can be an accelerant, but it can also get people driving down this pathway at a speed that is not sustainable. And if something happens, when life throws you a curveball, when something walks out that financial path ahead of you weren't expecting, you're much more likely to have an accident. So while some people have leveraged debt to build wealth, and some people have used debt to accelerate their wealth, for every one of those stories, there's hundreds of stories who got blown up by debt, who used debt, and debt caused them to get in a terrible financial accident. So those are my feelings on debt. Not that people have not made it work or can't make it work, but it certainly increases your risk factor. And while it may increase your speed, it also increases the chances that you never make to your destination.
Yeah, interesting point. Definitely. I mean, what would your recommendations be to somebody who's starting out investing? Would you say, obviously you've got to do your research, due diligence on everything, but what would you sort of suggest?
Identify what it is you're trying to build first.
So your goal.
Because investing, so let's say it's a young person who is saving they want to buy their first house in 6 or 7 years. That's a very different investment strategy than somebody who is the same age, but is investing for long-term retirement income. And so they might actually have two totally different investment strategies within one financial plan. One for a large purchase like a home or a business, in 6 or 7 years, the other to provide financial freedom and lifetime income 20, 30 years from now. So a lot of people, again, they collect investments. They don't strategically build towards a desired outcome. People need to get clear about their desired outcome before they start trying to pick the tools and tactics that they're going to use to get to that place.
Yeah.
Mm. I think a lot of people do that due to the lack of financial literacy, right? It's really, there's so much information out there, and it's all sometimes conflicting and confusing. And there's someone, someone knows someone who knows someone, and then you get, some knowledge passed down to you by your parents, which is probably not the most accurate knowledge, but that's the best they have to offer you. And so you then get into the same cycle they got into. Is there a thing where there's financial planning and there's saving for the future, right? How do you balance also enjoying your life? Because so many people just live for the future, and then they die, and then they never get to enjoy it. How do you create a balance between living your life now and also having a good financial security later in life?
Okay. Let me go back to something you said before you asked the question, and then I'll answer your question if that's okay, Faina.
Yeah, sure.
So you're right. There's so much information out there that it can be overwhelming. And there's so much misinformation out there because in today's social media age, you have a lot of broke people giving financial advice. And it'd be like me giving you ladies hair advice, shampoo advice. I don't have any hair. Don't take shampoo advice from somebody who's bald, right?
It can be a cautionary tale. I'm sorry.
It could be. And but we have a lot of people that are throwing advice out there that really don't know they don't have any idea what they're doing. The other thing is we don't know what the other person's goals are. We might be taking directions to a destination that we don't want to get to. They have a different starting place, they have a different ending place. So even if their tactics work for them, they're in a different financial situation. I'm not going to go do, Lance Armstrong's bike workout to become a better pole vaulter. They're two completely different prescriptions. Sorry, that wasn't the best analogy, but I made it up as I went. So make sure that you're taking the right directions to your destination. And you asked about this idea of enjoying the process. We believe freedom is not a finish line. Hitting the place of financial freedom, where financial independence, where you no longer need a job, that's not a finish line. You don't stop living and just wait around. You open up a whole new chapter of your life. So we want people to enjoy the journey, not just when they've experienced financial independence, but getting there. And that's where a financial plan is so important, because what a financial plan does is it connects your actions today with what you're trying to accomplish in the future. And if you have specific measurable goals, now those goals can change. They can evolve and adapt over time, but you have specific measurable goals. You also have finite goals, which means there is a finite amount of money every single month that you need to put towards paying your future self based on your long-term goals. When you have that plan, you're not trying to save as much as possible. You're trying to save a specific amount. Maybe it's $500 a month. Maybe it's $2,000 a month. And that amount might stretch you. It might be difficult. It might challenge you, but it is finite. So you don't have to save as much as possible. You can save X amount of dollars. And when you do that, you know that you've paid your future self enough. You can live in the present as well. So I think having a disciplined financial plan, a financial blueprint, allows you to pace yourself, where you can enjoy some of the present moment without worrying about stealing from your future self, but you're serving your future self enough that you can live in the present moment, knowing that you have some balance. You're not stealing from your future, but you're also not sacrificing too much in the present. Because we do meet people who, they're 60 years old and they have more wealth than they ever thought they could accomplish, but they've sacrificed their relationships, they've sacrificed their health, they've sacrificed things they shouldn't have to get a level of wealth that they really didn't need. So we do want to make sure that we find that balance in there. And I think having a long-term plan helps us do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the most, for me, my belief is one of the most powerful things about investing is the power of compounding and compound interest. What are your thoughts around that? Because obviously that's, this is what you specialize in, and you've got a huge amount of knowledge. What do you feel about this?
Well, you're absolutely right. And with compounding, what you do is you get time working for you rather than against you. When somebody is in debt, time works against them rather than for compound is working in the reverse direction. And that's why we use the metaphor of the orchard. When you plant trees, you invest in mutual funds, you invest in something, but it compounds and it grows. Eventually, it isn't the trees that you plant that are producing all the extra growth. It's the growth of what you planted 10, 15 years ago that is now growing fruit for you. And it starts small, and that's what gets people, I think, frustrated, or maybe even keeps them from starting. Is we don't want a lot of little trees in an orchard. We want beautiful trees with tons of fruit falling off, but we don't get to start there. We have to be willing to start small and let compounding work for us. And it is like it's a snowball type effect where it seems to roll and it doesn't really pick up much snow. And then pretty soon this thing builds and you're like, wow, this is really working for me. I can see the power of this. But it's getting that momentum started in small areas that is what builds the compounding later on. And we don't always get to see it unless we have a good plan. We see, okay, I'm putting this money in today. Here's what it's going to look like 15, 20, 25 years from now. Again, that's one of the importance of having a financial plan is you can see the impact of the seeds that you're planting today. But just like that orchard, it is going to grow slowly. But the compounding it's the eighth wonder of the world. I mean, it's how wealth is created. It's how wealth is sustained too, because we live in a rising cost world. A lot of people that don't understand the power of compounding end up taking fixed income into a rising cost retirement. Things like bonds and cash that don't have the same compounding effect of equities and owning companies. And their wealth is diminished as inflation eats away at the value of their income. So not only is compounding something that's great to harness, it's a necessity to build financial independence.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So let's say I'm incredibly inspired by what you're saying. I feel like my financial future needs a lot of direction. How does one start? Like, how do you find someone reputable? How do you find someone who is willing to accept, maybe you don't have a lot of cash at the moment or a lot of free income at the moment to even, how does one begin? Because I think people sometimes finish at the start, right? They go in, they get frustrated, they get overwhelmed, and then they say, you know what, screw it. I've been living like this. My mom lived like that. My dad lived like that. I'm just going to live this way because it's just so confusing. And there's so many people who have other motives, and you get in there and people, if someone tells you a cautionary tale, oh yeah, I invested with this guy, I lost everything, all of that other stuff. How does one begin this journey in a way where they don't immediately feel overwhelmed and give up?
Well, again, starting with the end in mind, I think is really important. Like, what do I want my life to look like 25 years from now? What do I want the end result to look like? What do I want my life to look like if I didn't need my paycheck? Where would I be? What would I be doing? And starting envisioning the destination. I think that's a great starting place. But then you want to look at what is my smallest step that I can take towards that destination. There might be 37 things that you can do. What is the smallest step you can take? It might be calling and scheduling an appointment, maybe with a financial planner, maybe with a tax professional, maybe with a debt coach, somebody who's drowning in debt. Shouldn't even be worrying about building their financial house. They need to put out the fires first. You wouldn't build your dream home in the middle of a forest fire. So if you're drowning in debt, your first step is probably getting out of debt. Maybe it's getting on a budget, but look at the smallest step towards that desired destination. And I will say, if somebody is meeting with a a financial planner, with an investment advisor, you want them to be asking questions about your goals, about what matters to you long before they ever start talking about investments and investing strategies, because they cannot properly prescribe a financial path until they diagnose what it is you're dealing with. And too often, people in my profession are so quick to provide solutions and to sell a product or a tool, they haven't even listened to what the person is facing financially. So when you're sitting down with a financial professional, they shouldn't be making a lot of statements. They should be asking a lot of questions.
That is very helpful. Because
Absolutely.
I've heard a lot of people, even when in terms of in the trading world with people, I'll always tell them, don't believe that tomorrow you're going to be rich. Because if that were true, only a certain small percentage of traders succeed. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, do not take your last dollar. If this is your last dollar, you should not be trading. Because people are the same thing, because there's so much misinformation. People go on social media and learn from TikTok that somebody did something, and I always encourage people not to maybe use TikTok and Instagram as your financial advisors, because everyone's flourishing, but when you dig deeper, these people are jobless, have never traded a day in their life, but it's presented to you, they stand in front of homes they don't own, they stand in front of cars they don't own. And so I feel like there's if someone is not asking you a bunch of questions about you, then they're probably not a good start, and it'll probably end tragically. So is there maybe a book that you've read that someone, let's say I want to start and I want to go slow, I want to read something, let me read something that kind of makes sense, and then I can take my next step. Is there a book that one can start with just to get their mind wrapped around what it is that you were talking about?
The best book I have ever read on building meaningful, sustainable wealth is a book by Nick Murray. It's called Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth. And I might have a copy. I have a copy around here somewhere, but Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth by Nick Murray. And I would say that book may have been the trigger that actually got me into this profession. It was like, this is the story I need to tell. My book is not out yet, but it will be released soon, Forging Financial Freedom. I think that's going to be pretty good too. Perfect. But I'm not very objective on that. But Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth is fantastic. And what I just want to say back to what you were mentioning about, people see this, they see this front that people put up. And I think that's what's so damaging about a lot of the so-called, wealth coaches, or whoever's out there, these social media influencers, is we don't really see wealth. We see consumption. We see the fancy car, the exotic vacations, the big houses. That's not wealth. In fact, exotic vacations and cars are the opposite of wealth. Those drain wealth. Anything with a motor and four wheels doesn't build wealth. It depreciates wealth. So a lot with our culture, with social media, we don't actually see wealth. Wealth is what's built behind closed doors. What people celebrate in our culture is consumption, which is the opposite of wealth. And we think that's what it should look like. And some of the wealthiest people we work with are the people with Carhartt jeans and tattered t-shirts, and they drive a truck that's been paid for 15 years, but they're wealthy. They don't have a need to show it off because they're living in a sense of freedom and abundance, and they're financially independent. They have nothing to prove to anybody.
On that note, can I ask you a question? What do you think about a mortgage versus renting? Do you think that having a mortgage and buying a house is a good investment? Or do you think renting is better?
It depends on where you're at in life. So do you want to rent for 30 years? No. But if you're at a place in life where you don't have a lot of stability, maybe you might be moving, maybe your job might be changing. There's a strategic place to rent. When your life is in flux, it could be going through a divorce. It could be in the middle of a career change. There's definitely places where renting is very strategic. For most people, I think owning a house long term is going to be a good move, but it also isn't much of an investment. A house that you are living in isn't producing any income. So I think by definition, an investment has to produce income. Whether you're buying a fourplex, whether you're owning individual stocks, whether you're using mutual funds, whether you own businesses, they need to produce an income. My house is a liability. It costs me money. It costs me money to repair it. It costs me money to keep the lights on, and it costs me money to keep the heat on, which in Alaska is really important. So my house, even though it's paid off, costs me money. It is a financial liability, but it's also my home. And that's where I create memories with my kids. And it's my happy place. It's where I sit out on the deck, not this time of year, but sit out on the deck and read a book after the kids have gone to bed. And I just exhale and I recharge my batteries. I love my home, but it is not an investment. It's a forced savings plan at best. And I think people need to be careful of that when they are looking at buying a home, realizing that until they move out of that house and rent it and produce an income, it really isn't an investment. It's a liability and should be treated as such.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Once again, thank you very much. Chad, we are coming to the end of our show. It's been an absolute pleasure. One of the things that has really stood out, well, there's been many amazing things that have stood out from our conversation, but I think one of the things that people maybe should think about is thinking about making and earning money while sleeping. And that's something that has been with me for decades, actually. I've always had that mantra, that belief, if I'm not making money when I'm sleeping, I don't feel easy. I feel quite uneasy. And so that's why for me, I made it, I changed that many years ago. So, but going back off track, thank you very much. It's been absolutely insightful, amazing. If you could just share the name of your book again, once more.
It's Forging Financial Freedom. Perfect. And people can pre-order a copy at forgingfinancialfreedom.com. And if they have questions about it or about anything we talked about, they can also reach us at veritasalaska.com. And happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. We're going to include the link in our description so there our listeners and viewers can easily access your financial expertise. And we come from opposing sides of the coin, you and I, but we're both striving for financial freedom and sort of our mission is very much similar in a way that we both are trying to guide people away from bad decisions and hype into some sort of regimented financial security and future. So there are, I guess, many ways to skin a cat, and I really appreciated a lot of the information that you provided today. I'm sure everyone has learned a little something, and these things are not mutually exclusive. If you're trading, you can still diversify and make sure that you're secure. And please don't put all your money in your trading account. And that's all I'm gonna say.
Well, and just real quickly on that, it's about intentionality. So whether Faina and I are using different tools to build our financial house, it still requires an immense amount of intentionality. People do not build sustainable wealth by accident. You do not get to a place of financial freedom by tripping over something. It is a disciplined, determined path that requires a lot of resilience and patience, regardless of the tools and tactics that you're using. So intentionality is key.
That is a great point to end our show.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and for watching. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.